There are a lot of different components for executives, and this is really what I want to focus on today, making sure that you understand these different compensation components because they can really absolutely make or break your negotiation. What's the difference really between mid-level negotiations and executive negotiations? Coming across as you're being very upfront and honest and forward with this information. You're not trying to withhold anything, it's just the situation that's holding you back. Let's talk about change in control clause. That would mean you get laid off and the company gets acquired. My name's Annie Murray. I'm a professional negotiation coach, and I've helped over 350 individuals successfully negotiate their job offers all over the world for a variety of levels, but predominantly executives. And today, I'm here to tell you all about the best way to approach your negotiation strategies as an executive. Have you ever gotten an offer from a startup and thought, what am I getting myself into? How do I value this equity? Are these terms actually favorable for me? And is there a potential that I could lose out on some of this potential upside? I'll be telling you all about the best way to negotiate while retaining leverage. My name's Annie Murray. I am a former Amazon and Microsoft recruiter, and I've been negotiating professionally for quite some time. In my time doing so, I've helped people pretty much all over the world with a variety of levels and titles, but the through line remains consistent. There are key elements in executive negotiations that people don't realize. So the 4 things I want to go over today are why negotiate, comp expectation questions and how to mitigate them, what is the appropriate level for you, and unique comp components that you should consider as we move forward. Why negotiate? Well, in today's market, you need to now more than ever. With stock markets tanking and prices keep rising, you need the compensation that you and your family can afford to survive on. As well as the companies continue to take advantage of a market that favors them, they continue to see more and more folks not negotiating. And what that does is it hurts the whole market of engineers because essentially now we are saying that we will agree to lower compensation just for the sake of having a job. So it's really in your best interest and the community's best interest for everyone to attempt to negotiate while they're hearing these job offers. And especially with things like severance, you really want to make sure that you and your family are protected before jumping into a new company. And that sort of thing is much easier to negotiate upfront than it is later on. What's the difference really between mid-level negotiations and executive negotiations? Now, mid-level negotiations, obviously, there's quite a bit more competition for the position. So you have to stand out quite a bit more, which can be a challenge when you're up against 300 plus other individuals. And of course, at a mid-level, it's more likely that they'll institute some timeline pressure, try to get you to accept a not so great offer by pressuring you within a certain time frame to respond. And then from the executive negotiation perspective, there's a lot more elements that are a little bit unique to it, like such as unique levers that you could potentially pull with regards to the equity, particularly at private companies. You'll also likely see more of a white glove service from the hiring team. And you might also see wider bands with regards to compensation. That doesn't mean that you'll never see timeline pressure as an executive. It does still happen occasionally. But for the most part, we see companies have a different level of demeanor when they're handling executives. Let's talk about Alan. Alan is a product leader who was impacted by a layoff after a 5-year tenure at a large tech company. And while he was job searching for almost 6 months, he was finally able to get traction somewhere, but unfortunately, despite his best attempts at the interviews and being interviewed for specifically a senior director level position, the company elected to just give him a senior title. Now, how can exactly Alan move forward is the question here. So don't worry. If this has happened to you, you're not alone. It does happen. And the best thing to do is think about how can I get this down level reversed? Why not have Alan with his down level call it out even before an offer has been given? Why not he say, I will only consider senior director offers? Well, if he did it at that point, he might have deemed himself to be too expensive for the company to really justify moving forward with him. Because these days, it seems like companies are looking just for any old excuse to write you off their list. The best thing to do to avoid losing the opportunity is instead try not to reveal a compensation data point early on, if at all. You don't want to call out something that might be too low, even if you think it's generous. It was simply too junior. He was shooting himself in the foot by calling out a number that, even despite what he thought, was still too low. And of course, you always have less leverage before an offer's been given than after. When a company gives you an offer, it's a signal that they buy into you, that they really believe you. So there's a lot more of an opportunity to negotiate at that point. Companies are much more reticent to pull an offer away, especially after you've completed interviews and actually gotten an offer, versus maybe you've completed the interviews, but you don't have an offer in hand yet. They won't feel so bad about marking you off and moving on to the next person. Some recruiters will not take that for an answer. They will not take, no, I will not share a comp expectation very easily. And again, revealing a number early could really shoot yourself in the foot foot. So the most important thing is to know how to hold up under pressure, because some of these recruiters can ask 2, 3, 4, 5 times again and again about what your happy number is. So make sure that you are prepared to handle some repetition here and some pressure. We really want to be protecting information and being strategic about when we share and what we share. If you call out that you have meta interviews going on, let's say you tell that to your Google recruiter when you're only in the first round of Google. What happens if Meta declines you? What happens if Meta down levels you? Then what are you supposed to say? So best thing to do is hold on that information until you're ready to counter. So that way the timing can still be aligned and you can still be as genuine as possible. Another thing to be aware of as you're going through these conversations is, what is your tone of voice reflecting? Are you coming across as defensive or apologetic, or are you seeming cool, calm, and collected? Even though it feels very emotional, I mean, you're talking about your financial future with your direct manager or the arbiter of higher compensation. So of course it can feel emotional. But if we become emotional, recruiters are going to dive on that and use it to their advantage. So the more cool, calm, collected you can be, the better off you'll be. And also, you have to remain winnable. A company will never go to bat for you on compensation if they don't realistically think you're going to sign. So make sure that you keep reiterating your excitement for the opportunity, that they're a top choice for you. It's really just coming down to compensation. How do we actually mitigate these comp expectation questions? What do we say here? When you're in a first round phone screen, how do you mitigate being asked what comp you're looking for? A lot of times you can shove out the question, say, oh, it's a little bit too early stages. I'm confident we'll come to something later on. I am waiting on some other companies to give me updates on compensation. Can we reconnect once I have that intel? And I'm not comfortable sharing my current comp. Those are all great options. And what I would say ultimately is our goal for the narrative from the perspective of the recruiter and the company looking at you as a candidate is that we really want them to think, oh, this person is just a victim of circumstance. This person wants to give us a number, but they're just waiting on their other companies to get back to them. They want to tell us what they're going to be earning post-promotion, but they haven't been shared that information yet, so they don't know. They don't understand the full scope of the position, so how could they call out a number at this time? So framing it more like that instead of I don't know or I don't want to share, that will likely cause more arguments. So you want to avoid that and instead make yourself a victim of circumstance. Another great way to push back on comp expectation questions is to ask for more information. Hey, that's a great question about my comp, and I appreciate that you want to match my desired compensation, but can I just ask, what's the company considering for a comp range for this position? I just really want to get a better sense of the scope. What level is this role targeting? Again, it's pretty hard to call out a number when you don't even know what level you're going to be placed at. Or even asking about the compensation components. What is typically made up in an offer? Sometimes putting that question back on the recruiter can result in you getting more information without having to reveal anything. You can also consider giving concessionary information, saying things like, look, I'm talking to this other company and name drop that company. We haven't talked about comp yet, but I'll let you know when we, again, giving them a little sliver of information that they can go make a meal out of. I'm in consideration for an L6 position at Meta. I don't know what comp to expect, but I'll keep you posted. Again, a piece of concessionary information that's flattering. You're being placed at a high level at a desirable company. You'll keep them posted. You're trying to be transparent. Or I'm anticipating a promotion. I still don't know what the details look like. I'll keep you posted. Again, coming across as you're being very upfront and honest and forward with this information. You're not trying to withhold anything. It's just the situation that's holding you back.
Salary expectation questions can sometimes get pretty intense, so we created a free guide and a video workshop on this channel. Go to feelvalued.co/salary expectations guide to handle tricky questions from startups to big tech.
As we were talking about Alan, it was a little bit hard for him to really know exactly what level he even should be placed at, because for him, he was at the senior level at public companies. So he wasn't sure if it would really make sense for him to be coming in at a private company closer to a VP or director level. But after completing the interviews for senior director and then being placed just at senior, he certainly knew at that point that he needed to push back on that. Since this person was at a senior level, L6 or L7 within FANG, what would make the most sense for this level of company would be a director or senior director title. So we put together a 30, 60, and 90-day goal document that outlined the impact of this role and how the scope of it was really more aligned with a senior director level position based on the stakeholders that we needed bought in, based on the actual day-to-day work, based on the number of people he would be leading. So we put together this business case, essentially, this business justification justification for why this candidate needed senior director. We walked it through with the hiring manager after the first offer was extended, but before we countered. And the hiring manager really responded positively to that 30, 60, 90. They said, and I quote, "This is a really smart way of asking for this." So they went back and got his down level reversed. So he was now getting a senior director level offer. This is partially just making sure that you're understanding what the actual level is that you're coming in at, what level is appropriate for you, what level is going to make the most sense based on your level of experience and what other companies you've been at. And then leveraging this hiring manager to get the up level that we needed or the down level reversal that we needed. It might feel a little confusing to not actually call out a number when you're asked, especially as an executive. There's this desire to make sure that we're not getting a lowball first offer, that we're starting off on the right foot here. We don't want to be too difficult, but it's important to remember, again, what's not negotiable now becomes negotiable later. So we really want to focus on hearing the first offer, asking to set up time with the manager like Alan did, and preparing and presenting the action plan, because after that, Alan got a fresh offer that was reflective of the senior director level. So it wouldn't have made sense for him to counter at this point or even before, because he might have called out a number that was far too high for senior or a comp number that was more reflective of senior and not senior director, which could have backfired on him later on. We want to lay a foundation with the manager that demonstrates we're excited about the opportunity and we really believe in it. We have a business case, and that will help reduce risk of the offer going away as well, because your manager is the person who determines if an offer gets pulled based on negotiation. So the more you get them bought in, the more excited they are to bring you on board, the more likely they'll go to bat for you on comp, and the less likely they'll be to pull an offer based on negotiation. And we have to remember too that there are some limiting factors on compensation depending on the company. Sometimes if you really crush your interviews, they will bring you in at the max offer, right? They will say this person really deserves our maxed out offer. It's very uncommon, but it does happen. There are also startups that very frequently will have limitations on cash. They can't offer bases above $300,000 to just anyone. They can't offer 50K signing bonuses all the time. So in those situations, how can we get around these limitations in the comp? Best thing to do there, first of all, check out our executive comp cheat sheet at this link, feelvalue.co/exec-comp. That's got a ton of great details in there about what a typical executive compensation package could look like, both at startups and at public companies. But one of the most important things to know here is how unique components for executives can really impact your negotiation. But you first have to determine, what is your top priority? Is it cash or is it equity? Because each option has upside variability, right? Do you want more certainty? Do you want more risk? There are different levers to help make up for lack of equity in cash. We just have to be strategic about which levers we want to engage here depending upon your priorities. Every ask does add to our negotiation pile. Imagine your negotiation is a pile of rocks, and every ask that you add on for compensation or for a contract term adds another rock on top of that pile. So we want to be strategic about, is this a rock that we actually want on our pile? Does this make sense for us to argue for? Is it worth maybe the little bit of wobbling this will cause to the remainder of the pile? Just things to think about. There are a lot of different components for executives, and this is really what I want to focus on today, making sure that you understand these different compensation components, because they can really absolutely make or break your negotiation. I have talked to so many executives who have said, I accepted an offer and I ended up losing millions of dollars in equity because I didn't know how to exactly put this together, what contract terms were going to be the most favorable for me. I didn't know about my stock appreciation rights. I didn't know about making a longer exercise window. I didn't know about getting a change in control clause, right? So try to educate yourself about these things because it's really in your best interest. I always say contract terms for executives is like buying insurance in the United States. They always make it more confusing than it needs to be, so that way you won't have as much context and they can have it be more in their favor. So do the due diligence, educate yourself, and prevent yourself from walking away from millions of dollars. Let's start with these first few components. Let's begin with accelerators and kickers. These are things that can impact your private company equity. Like we talked about, there are some levers that help with equity, some levers that help with cash. Accelerators and kickers are definitely an equity feature. It basically is with regards to the timing of when your equity vests. In some cases, they can speed it up depending upon certain milestones being accomplished, certain events taking place. So equity kickers have to do with lenders in this case, specifically where the lender would provide credit at a lower interest rate. And in exchange, you get an equity position within the company, the borrower's company. There are are some of these unique elements that you could consider adding on. Hey, could I get a potential kicker in the future? It's an option to buy equity attached to a certain level of debt, usually debt that's used to finance leverage buyouts or management buyouts. Kickers basically incentivize you to buy more equity, buy more stock options. And then accelerators can help, forgive the repetitive term, but accelerate the vesting of that equity to you. So potentially you could pay a little bit less for your equity, but have a bit of debt associated with it, or you could have your equity vest out a bit faster to you. And then there's things like milestone and retention bonuses. We were talking about what makes up cash, what makes up equity. This can help make up for a lack in cash. So essentially, these are great for more metrics-driven roles. These are great for positions in sales, but it doesn't even have to be that. Milestone bonuses really refer essentially to when the company reaches a certain revenue target, when the company reaches a certain goal, when you as an employee reach a certain goal, you get a flat bonus amount. It's different from an annual bonus because it's just based on like this one specific goal. And then retention bonuses basically encourage you to stay on long term at one of these companies. So a retention bonus, more often than not, doesn't get paid out to you at least until the first year, if not the second year. But a lot of times, especially if they can't add a signing bonus on, it can be a great way to get a little bit of extra cash made up. And then stock appreciation rights, that's essentially giving you an option to get a bit more of the upside as the stock continues to grow in value. All different things that can give you different benefits depending on what's the most motivating to you. Now let's talk about change in control clause. This kind of goes hand in hand with the accelerators I was talking about earlier, because more often than not, change in control clauses result in some kind of double trigger, single trigger equity event, which essentially means that if two events are to take place, if it's a double trigger event, that would mean you get laid off and the company gets acquired, or you get the company to a certain amount of revenue and you get laid off, or something to that effect. Then you will get equity vested out to you quite a bit faster at that point. But those two events have to take place. Now, when we're talking about early versus extended exercise, that's all with regards to when you actually purchase the equity. So a lot of times some folks will want to buy the equity a bit early, especially if there's a potential for the value to go up substantially. Then there are other situations where, let's say you quit and the company gives you 90 days to pay back $500,000 to buy stock options. That's really not a super reasonable time frame to do that within. Best thing to do in that moment is to see if an extended exercise window could be an option. 5 years tends to be pretty standard, but I've seen it go up to 9 years, 10 years. Ask for a time frame that you feel makes sense, especially at the executive level. You're probably going to pay upwards of $1 million plus to exercise your stock options. Just be thoughtful about what time frame would make sense for you. And then obviously severance is a huge one that you should absolutely talk about upfront, talking about how many months you get paid out. 6 months tends to be standard for executives, if not a bit longer, but make sure that you're asking about it. And there's a way to ask about it without risking them thinking that you're not as excited about the opportunity. Saying things like, based on my experience getting laid off in the past, if you could share with me preemptively what the severance package looks like, that would really give me the education I need for me and my family to feel safe moving forward with this. Make it more about your situation and less about lack of faith that this company is going to do well. And just see what their policy looks like. A lot of these things won't even be shared with you up front. You kind of have to ask about them, ask what's the severance policy looks like. Then you might see more of the change in control clause stuff, some stuff about the exercise windows. And then with things like milestone retention bonus, you might want to ask about that while you're still resolving comp. But these other elements of accelerators, kickers, stock appreciation rights, those can be things that maybe you ask about once the comp is resolved. So that way you can get the comp where you want it to be and then make sure it's actually going to vest out in a way that you would like and that you get the appreciation rights and whatnot. Ultimately, the 4 pillars of a successful negotiation are: the company really needs to like you. They really want to believe that you deserve it. They need to be able to justify internally, hence doing that 30, 60, 90-day goal conversation about your business case for why you deserve more, why you deserve a down-level reversal. And the company also needs to think that you're winnable. They really need to believe that you will actually sign with them. So being more upfront about, I'm really excited about this, that will go a long way. Obviously, the risk does feel higher these days. We are seeing more anecdotes about people going solo who are struggling with their negotiations, maybe even losing their offers. And what I'd say is that honestly, in today's market, it's more risky not to negotiate. You get so much of a sense of how much a company actually respects you and likes you through negotiation. And also, again, if you're not asking about severance, if you're not asking about change in control clauses, if you're not asking about kickers and accelerators, you might end up losing out on quite a bit of equity, especially if you leave the company due to a layoff or even if you just quit. And you might even miss out on a huge element of cash cash, like, yeah, they couldn't get you a 25K signing bonus, but maybe they could do a 50K retention bonus over 2 years. The first year, get 25, second year, get 25. Ultimately, make the ask and just make it in a respectful way that has a business justification. That will go a long way. And you really get to suss out, does this company actually like me? And also, don't go it alone. If you're going by yourself, of course, you're putting yourself at more risk. Instead, work with someone who's done it a billion times, because these recruiters are negotiation wizards. They have their 10,000 hours of practice in. And us as individual employees, maybe we negotiate 4 to 6 times in our whole career. Versus when you work with a negotiation coach, we're doing it just as much as these recruiters are. Instead of going it by yourself and thinking about, oh gosh, what am I supposed to say on the counteroffer? What number should I even ask for? Do I even deserve this number? Is this even relevant with the market data? How do I even approach these contract terms? What company do I even accept? Instead of stressing about all that stuff alone, talk to a negotiation coach. That's what we're here for. Literally all day, I write people's scripts. I do mock negotiations on those scripts with these clients and get them set up for success so they can get a strong increase in their offer and ultimately set them and their family up for success in this new role. Who do we help? Great question. It might seem like she only helps executives, or really only seems like she helps people in product or software engineers. I'll tell you this, any job title in the tech space, I've helped folks. Commercial counsel, UX researcher, data scientist, product, customer success manager, CROs, you name it, we've helped them, okay? And we will help people regardless of the level, regardless of the title, as long as you're in the tech space. And look, don't just take it from us. We've got other people who have said this for us, that they've really enjoyed working with us. So highly recommend you check out our Trustpilot page, our website, so you can actually see more of these reviews and get more of a sense of how we've helped people before. So feel free to follow the link in our description below, and we'd be more than happy to jump on a free 30-minute consultation call with you and ensure that you're getting the support you need during one of the most stressful conversations in your career. And check out our YouTube videos, and also don't forget to check out that compensation executive guide, also linked in the description below. Thank you.